Um, I'm Jim, and I guess you can consider me your cartoon before the real movie starts. We are here doing a downtown assessment. My name is Jim Engel, and I'm director of the Iowa Downtown Resource Center. We have a ton of slides today, so we're going to talk kind of fast, and I'm going to do the quickest introduction that I've ever done. We've got a team of 5 people here in Knoxville, and thanks for all your hospitality over the course of 3 days. I'm the director of the Iowa Downtown Resource Center. In front of me here is Jim Thompson, who is also a team member with the Iowa Downtown Resource Center. Jim does a lot of work with real estate development and working with city governments. Back here is Chris Patrick, who is an executive director of the Fort Dodge Main Street program. She used to be a Main Street director in Sheraton, one of your neighbor communities. And then over in this other corner, we have Jeff Geertz, who's a special project manager with IEDA. Does a lot of sustainability work. She's currently on the energy team and does all of these downtown assessments with us. And then Dennis Reynolds, who has Reynolds Urban Design. And Dennis draws lots of pictures. So he was with us for the course of 3 days, kind of putting on paper and drawing what ideas came out of the visit. So we get to know Knoxville really well. We put our heads together, stayed up late tonight, did a lot of work, put together a report, and after this presentation is over, we're going to come back. We're going to submit a written report, which is probably a 35-page report with lots of good ideas that hopefully you'll take some of them after we leave. But that report will be available to the masses in 4 to 6 weeks. So that's the visit in a nutshell. And what we typically do on this visit, we suck in a lot of information from Knoxville over a short period of time. We always do a pre-visit survey. But I'm going to start off. I'm already behind on my slides. I'm going to go through this. We did a pre-visit survey. We had a sample of about 143 people filled out the survey, which we thought was a good sample. And I just want to quickly go over some of the details, some of the highlights of that. We asked what people thought the greatest strength is in the downtown area. And you see the list. The courthouse was by far the #1 answer. And we've done this in other county seat towns where that did not actually score as high. So I think the courthouse response is maybe double the second most popular response, which was the Grand Theater. Also, the restaurants were listed as a strength. Some awesome businesses, locally grown businesses. We heard that the retailers were starting to plan their own events. Some building updates. And we're going to talk a lot about buildings because you got a long way to go with building rehabs in the downtown area. But we saw some great apartments yesterday. And there have been some work done on some of the buildings. Drinking establishments was mentioned. The square and some new businesses have opened, and I think that even happened during the pandemic. So that's a positive thing. Second question in the survey is if we could change one thing, what would it be? And by far, business development came up here, is filling empty buildings, getting more variety. Number 2 is taking care of those buildings. It's interesting because lots of times we hear communities talk about the historic fabric downtown. We didn't hear that word very much. I think out of all the people that filled out that survey, we only heard historic maybe 3 times. We heard more things like update the buildings. But that's kind of understandable because it's hard to see a lot of the history in the Knoxville buildings because you've had aluminum covering a lot of them for so long. Loud and clear, we heard less service businesses, more retail. It's a courthouse town, so we see that often in county seat towns where there are more professional offices, service businesses. More need for outdoor public spaces, public art. We heard loud and clear more events are needed on the square. That's not something we hear that often when we do this survey, so we thought that was impressive. More restaurants, we always hear that. It doesn't matter how many restaurants you have, people want more. That's pretty typical. Rehabbing of apartments upstairs and then better store hours, we heard. How does downtown make you feel? It makes me feel sad just reading this. A lot of people said sad. That word came up a lot. And I tried to kind of group these based on the meaning of the adjectives that were used. It's sad, depressed. And then that was followed up with potential and coming back and hopeful. And then we had this kind of middle of the road viewpoint of blah, meh, stagnant, bored. And then we're back with okay, satisfied, neutral. So people were kind of up and down with how downtown made them feel. How do they want it to make them feel? Oops, I'm having trouble here. There we go. They want to feel vibrancy, alive, energized, excited, welcome, inclusive, happy, joyful, proud. We asked what would improve the business climate in the downtown. And the most popular answers, of course, were less vacancies, more businesses, retail, building facelifts, downtown events. Some of these are getting a little bit redundant. And then we asked what type of new business would be successful in Knoxville. I don't know if we've ever done this survey, and we've done a lot of these visits where restaurants didn't come out first in the survey. Like I said, people always want more restaurants, whether they can support them or not. That wasn't the case here. That finished third on the survey. It was actually clothing came out number one, with bakery coming out number two. And we totally know that bakery answer is a Pella envy kind of a thing, you know? So we don't see a ton of bakeries, you know, in towns this size. Some of them. But it was interesting. Shoe store came out, number 4. That was very high compared to the surveys that we typically do. And then gifts, books, and sporting goods. And by the way, this complete survey, there were tons of answers to these questions. So we're going to submit that in the written report that we send back to you, so you'll see the whole list. And then we asked what the most needed public amenities are. Now, this was from I guess a list of things that we gave you in the survey. So it was circle every one that you think we need, I believe. And number 1 was places for kids, street seating, public art, green space, better lighting, in that order. Okay, then the second part of what we do here is we identify both community assets and strengths, and then specifically downtown and assets and strengths. And Knoxville certainly has those. First of all, the obvious ones, things that you're known for: racing, the sprint cars, the Hall of Fame, Red Rock. Didn't hear a ton about that on our visit here over the last 3 days, but we heard some. Came out in the survey a bit too. Very large employment base here, very impressive. We had a driving tour of the community, very impressive. Also equally impressive were the school system here. The career readiness program was particularly cool, we thought. There are a lot of organizations doing good things. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. The hospital, and we heard one really cool thing about the hospital is the people that work at the hospital tend to live here, especially the doctors. And I think there's even an incentive for that to happen, which was really impressive. Drive-through Christmas lights, we heard a lot of good things about that. And then the rec center. Those are all community strengths and assets. For downtown's assets and strengths, I mentioned before the courthouse and county seat in the survey came out big, very impressive. And certainly it's a boon to the economy and the downtown that you have a lot of people working downtown in the courthouse. The library, Carnegie Library, also very, very cool. Restaurants and entertainment. When we're here for 3 days on a downtown assessment, this is important to us too. We didn't have any problem finding places to eat, so very nice. We heard many things about the Living Windows as one of the bigger events that is done in Knoxville. The Grand Theater, this place, fantastic. There have been a few building rehabs so that it can serve as a model for some of the projects in the future. And then also the business openings, and we heard about that in the survey also. So that's a nice list of strengths and some weaknesses in the previous questions too. I think one of the themes of this visit was we're seeing an uptick, an upswing. Things tend to be getting better, but we might be at the low end of that upward curve, that upward slant. But we think that is very encouraging. We came up with 6 themes that we're going to base recommendations on. And when we do these visits, I always tell people, please don't be offended, because we tend to be constructively critical in every one of these visits. You've got so many good things going on too, but Jim, you can echo what I'm saying. Rarely do we do one of these visits where someone doesn't go home really mad at Jim. Okay, so we're honest, we're blunt. We like to celebrate the good things that have happened here and the cool entities and amenities you have. But if there's an issue, we're not going to sugarcoat it today, and I don't think anybody wants that. We're going to lead off with the building theme. You see our 6 themes are buildings, housing, finding coolness in Knoxville, events and marketing, open for business, and leadership and roles. And Jim is going to be blunt, I know. I personally think the weakness of downtown Knoxville is probably the building conditions. I know it's been that way for a long time too. So we're gonna talk about that a lot, and I'm gonna turn it over to Jim Thompson to start off.
Thanks, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here. I've actually been here several times over the last 20 years, and what I shared with several of you is it seems like I always get invited when there's a change in staff, and it's time to redo this. Well, Jim's right. I tend to be a little direct, and it's not my intention to ever offend you, but I want to start off with a really quick thing. Those of you in Knoxville that know Dave Hoke, please don't believe any story he tells you, and especially any story that he tells you about me, okay? So, are we cool, Dave?
Right on.
But if you want to know about Dave, ask me, because I'll tell you. Dave employed my wife. He was her boss, and so we knew Dave really, really well in his marketing career, so it's cool. I'm glad. I can't believe you're still here, frankly. Come on.
Neither can I.
So congratulations. I like working with Dave, and he's very positive. But don't expect that out of me, is what I'm saying, okay? So buildings. Frankly, things haven't changed that much, right? Jim said this. I've been coming here for 20 years and different occasions, and I'm encouraged that things look better today than the last visit when I was here. But Jim is right. You have a long way to go. And it's going to take everybody pulling in the same direction to be able to get where you need to go. This is not acceptable, what you have today. And if you don't believe me, go for a walk. Okay? So I broke it down to 3 things. I am not going to give you a whole bunch of list of things that you won't do. We can do that. Why? Okay? So I broke it down into 3 things. The current condition of the buildings, and frankly, it's one building at a time. It's an incremental process. We have to start taking baby steps to correct this. And I think you're on the right path. Okay? But we've got to see some evidence, visual evidence, of things getting better. I'm not covering business recruitment in this section, but I do that in a lot of towns. And I'll tell you what, best businesses want to be in the best buildings. You walk around your square, your downtown, and there are buildings that can't be occupied because of their condition. I stopped counting at 10. So please, I invite you, go look around. Second thing, we need somebody to be in charge. When we ask property owners and businesses, who do you go to for assistance? And everyone kind of did, we don't really know where to go. Our recommendation, I know you're in a transition with an interim city administrator, you have got to get serious at the city level of community and economic development. This waiting for somebody else to do it has got to end. You've got to get serious about that. There are professionals helping communities all over Iowa. We want to partner with you, but we will not be back if you don't ask. Because I got other towns asking. So we won't be back. So think about that. We can help you in this, and I'll show you a couple things in a little bit. And then the last thing is really partnerships. I get so frustrated working across every corner of Iowa, and frankly, I do this all over the country, okay? There are property owners that say, I own this building, government, you can't tell me what to do with it. I say baloney. It is not your right as a property owner to hurt the value of your neighbor. And that's happening in your downtown. So city governments, how do you get money? Property tax, right? If you want to grow property tax, you've got to raise the assessed value. I say when we do our job right, we raise the value of every building and create parking problems. So when we do that, we want the values to go up because the buildings are worth more. They're improved. It's an easy solution. And it's frankly a partnership with property owners and city government and state and federal dollars. That's why we call it carrot and stick. You can dangle incentives in front of them. If they won't bite, and sometimes they don't, then we have to go down the stick side with ordinances and say, you've got to do these things or you're not going to get where you need to go. Is that clear? Definition of insanity. Doing the same things and expecting different results. That's what I see here. You're always waiting for somebody to do the next right thing. And it's not always happening. And it's because we're not working together to do that. We're waiting for somebody to do the next right thing. That day has to end. We're going to create partnerships and do it together. So I want to run through real quick, just briefly, what a vacant building costs you. We brought in a national economist, they ran through these numbers, and every building, I told you I stopped at 10, every building on an annual basis costs the community $220,000 with property tax, lost loans, not paying appropriate heat and lights when they're occupied, okay? So think about that, add the decimal point. So now if I stopped at 10, we're over $2 million of lost economic opportunity for this community. How can you afford that? Those values are going to keep going down. Iowa's property tax system is really frustrating to me. When a building is vacant, it loses value and that rewards that behavior. We've got to figure that out. Other states are doing it. And we're trying to catch up. So, working through the first piece, getting people engaged with this process. I really encourage the city to offer a downtown walking tour. Advertise when it is, and everybody get together that wants to, and go through a facilitated walk, just like we did, and you will then take off your rose-colored glasses before you start, but look at things exactly the way they are. And when you do that, you're going to start identifying opportunities. Vacant buildings, a regular thing that we do that really costs virtually nothing, okay, is to wash the windows. Put a display in them from a not-for-profit. Those are easy things. I would love it if I came to town and you hid your vacant buildings because of those things. Okay? They're in my face when I drive around. And then go visit other towns. I think there's other towns doing this. If you need a list, I'll give them to you. But there's other towns, and please don't think that Pella is the only place you can go visit. There are other towns that are much more successful and doing it appropriately. I shouldn't use the word fake historic, should I? Yeah. Shouldn't use that. but using it appropriately so that you can get what you want in your town. Knoxville's unique. If you fix it up, it'll look unique and you can be proud of what you have. And then the city has to hire somebody. I said that we need somebody that's going to be in charge of this. Short term, one of the code official people, I don't know all the structure, but repeatedly people said, well, who owns this building? Who owns this building? With Beacon today, and the county's done a great job of getting that stuff listed, we need somebody to be in charge of that to create that database. We want to know who owns every building and what the use is, so that when we start figuring out how to create incentives, we can notify them all. That information's all at your fingertips now, so we can do that and get it ready. When we do that, we'll create a dialogue with business owners. Your property owners are begging for somebody to talk to them. I was shocked as I got in and out of several buildings. They're asking for help and don't know where to go. So it's time to fix that. Again, visit other communities, and then as you're doing this work and you're talking to property owners and business operators, you will start identifying incentives. Every time I work with city governments all over the state, I already have projects in my hip pocket of people that are willing to do things, so that we know when we create this incentive locally that it will partner with state and federal dollars, and we can hit the ground running and see evidence of that really quick. That's so much fun to do that. You're accomplishing things when you do that. Oh, I throw this in because I love that quote. If you want to find reasons not to do this, you can find them, okay? Because they exist in town. So incentives. I put together, I'll send you with the full report a whole detailed list of other things that you can do. At the state level, we manage the Community Development Block Grant Program for you. Okay, you're a non-entitlement community, and you apply to us. Almost all of the communities that match that money use TIF. And I know the legislature messes with it every year, but it looks like we're going to be okay again. But TIF is a tool that preserves the frozen base of what you have for the school and the county, and then allows us to redirect those dollars into improvements that, frankly, Iowa is one of the states I work in that does not have a but-for clause. And I would love Iowa to institute that. If it wasn't for TIF, this development wouldn't happen. And it's easy to be able to see that in the towns that I work in. So we have to figure out, I don't want to give TIF when it's not needed either. I've seen inappropriate use, and we have to make sure it's appropriate. Urban revitalization is a great way to encourage housing. It's a consolidated abatement. It was made just for housing, and you can abate 100% in downtown property for housing for up to 10 years and up to 100%. It's a hell of an incentive, I think better than TIF, to encourage what you want. And we can figure that out. Other ways that you fund that, you create facade improvement grants, usually funded through the TIF increment. I know you already have a revolving loan fund. The reason I included loan guarantee is many times property owners can't afford two loans. A loan through the bank and a loan through this not-for-profit or the city. Sometimes it's better if we protect the bank's interest. It makes it more highly secured, and we can do that through a loan guarantee. We can talk about those things. These are tools already in existence. You're not reinventing the wheel. We can show you, give you a blueprint on how to do things. The block grant dollars are super great because the first one, downtown revitalization, I think I looked just before we left, there's 63 communities that have gone before you. So this is not new, okay? And they're doing facade improvements, usually a master facade. It's usually 10 to 12 projects, sometimes more or less. But it's $500,000 grant from the state through block grant to be able to get this done. Imagine if you did this and did 10 building fronts. It's going to make a difference here. I'm not going to go through every one. I manage the Community Catalyst Program. We have $10 million that's been out in the state. We're about to approve probably $2 more million. we're ready for an application from Knoxville every single year. Pick a building. The buildings aren't your issue here. Getting appropriate building owners that will work through the process and get something activated in that space is the biggest problem. Nuisance and property abandoned, that's a revolving loan fund. We're sitting on $3.2 million that's directed toward housing. It's for dangerous and dilapidated homes. It's a zero interest loan, and why are we not talking about it? Oh, the last one, rural innovation grants. I just scored those again yesterday. Took a break from the interviews and did not see an application from Knoxville. I talked to Heather, and we're working on maybe a potential one really, really quick. So we'll see what happens there. We got to get you in this game. So mini grants is something I'm going to buzz through really quick, but it's a way for you to get dollars to do very appropriate tactics on a building. So if a building owner can't afford to do the entire facade, and sometimes that's true, maybe we can attack specific things with that. This is one of the ugliest buildings I've ever worked on, and this is what can happen. A grant for the storefront, a grant for the windows upstairs, signage, add lighting. It's really kind of a cool thing, and we can do that one piece at a time. So this isn't a one-size-fits-all. Yes, we want you to do the block grant stuff. Yes, we want you to consider creating other local funding, but we've got to do it also. If we can't do big picture, we can do smaller things. Right-sizing retail. This is what a narrow building in a downtown looks like. What we've encouraged, and I'm not going to get into all the details on how we pay for this yet, that will be in the final report. But putting up a dividing wall or a demising wall, that can be a mini grant process. So if somebody is hell-bent on using their building for storage, which I hate, and you should too, if you put up a dividing wall, have offices or small retail or pop-up business in the front, you can do that and actually cash flow then this building that you bought that you're using for storage. The worst thing that can happen to your downtown, allowing storage downtown. No feet on the sidewalks. So my last thing then is, so I talked about the carrots, now we're talking about ordinances, the sticks. I'll give you examples of minimum maintenance ordinances, the way this works. The derecho rolls through town, right? Windows and upper stories get broken out. They put plywood on them. A minimum maintenance ordinance will say, property owner, you have this long to get them back to what they were prior. And there's no discussion then. Then you start the fining after that. Takes a real strong backbone, and the council and the mayor have to support city staff through this process, but it works, okay? First floor housing, I didn't get to ask. Please don't allow first floor residential in a storefront side of a business and enforce that ordinance. Once a building goes residential, it rarely ever goes back. So we're talking about storefront windows, they should be businesses. A vacant building ordinance is one that is not open to the public. So now we're saying you get to define what is vacant for your town. I worked with the Iowa League of Cities on this, and we have some solid examples to be able to show you, again, in your final report, of how you can define vacant. Not open public hours can be defined as vacant. You with me? So you have to enforce this to say, okay, if you're going to own one of these buildings, you have a responsibility to get more feet on the sidewalk to assist their neighbors. Get more and more business opportunities for everybody. So a vacant building ordinance, and the companion piece to that is a vacant building registry. So what happens if they don't meet If they meet the definition of a vacant building, you have to register it. So somebody closes their lease, closes their store, and let's just say you decide after 3 months it's still vacant. It's a voluntary registration. They pay a fee to get on the registry, required, $25, $50, I don't care, okay? But after 6 months, if it's still vacant, you have to pay that fee again and allow city code officials to go through that property. Bad things happen to vacant buildings. Have you heard of fires in other towns that you lose half a block? That's what happens, okay? We need to make sure that this is not going to happen to your downtown. I was going to talk to you about signage. Please don't consider this until you get the spaces cleaned up. You're not ready for this. This is an example from Sheraton, not far from here. It's an available property list. You're not ready for this. Why market these buildings when they can't be occupied? Can you guys tell I'm not a real patient person? There we go. I'm going to switch to housing real quick and then I'll be done. This is what happens when you get someone living upstairs. We know, based on data, that if somebody lives upstairs and can walk to a retail store or a bar or restaurant, they spend 200 times the average person. 200 times, because they're walking to it. So we know that if you get $500 to $1,000 a month rent for an upper story apartment, you have some that we toured that were $1,200, okay? Some really nice places. But they'll get an additional benefit for every apartment of $20,000 to $40,000 a year. Easy, we can justify these numbers. This is a really cool apartment. You have some here too, and I'm hoping that you can start working on some tours to show off what you have. Above 111 has 2 really nice places. There's others in town above A&P. I did not get in it, but Chris did, and it's super cool. And I hope you can get a chance to look at those. This should be your downtown. So housing, there's a rural readiness assessment tool that's facilitated through Iowa State. The application's closed, it's over, I scored them yesterday. We awarded 7 out of 10 of these, and so there is a chance, and I'll talk about it this afternoon as soon as I get back to work, that if Knoxville's interested, we can figure this out. But it's a really cool tool, facilitated, and it really gets you a long ways. I really don't know of a town that's gone through this that hasn't been successful. Because I'm tired of looking at housing needs assessments that never lead to implementation. And that's what I review all the time. It's like, yeah, we're supposed to have 700 houses, big deal. It didn't tell you how to get there. That's what this process does. Well, that's the thing, we just gotta do it now, okay? I tried to make this as direct and as concise as possible, so now we just gotta do it. Dennis has a couple slides that he wants to talk about.
All right.
No, I'm good.
Congratulations, maybe it's not quite the right word, but you've got some really nice buildings. And I bet the Wells Fargo Bank doesn't get as much love as it should. Really beautiful building, looks like it's well maintained, and has done some nice graphics on it. An idea might be those beautiful light sconces that are on there. They disappear, they're kind of gray and they blend into the stone. Put a contrasting color put a Wells Fargo color if you want, even something that makes those lanterns really pop up. That's a low-hanging fruit, low-cost, high impact. I think you'd really even appreciate the building and those light sconces even more. So we looked at the dance studio because, I mean, it's obviously really visible, right? The big aluminum swoop thing on it. And we had a nice tour inside of it, and it's really great to see the business in there and their vision for this building. So this is a drawing that really says if you pull the aluminum off and tell all the pigeons to go away, This is what you get, you know, and it's beautiful. And tall windows on the upper floor. On the first floor, I show a way if you need to replace the storefront, sometimes it's easier to do smaller windows, but gang them all together so you still get that lots of visibility, but it's a little easier on the pocketbook. And then this building does it somewhat, and it could be enhanced even further in that it's inset slightly. You chose not to put street trees in your downtown, and so shade is really hard to come by. And we even heard people say it gets really hot downtown, so we don't do some things in August here. So really think about doing canopies that provide shade, provide protection from the rain. I'm really amazed how little you have in terms of canopies. So this is showing a big canopy for Elite Dance. And then the building next to it, The Place, put a canopy on there. So there's lots of different canopies. They can be pretty economical, fabric, light metal, and they're great opportunities for signage. I really like seeing signs up here as opposed to blocking the views of the windows. The windows are part of the downtown's treasure. We want to drive by and see what's happening inside and get excited and say, I want to stop, I want to be a part of that activity. Oh, look, that building looks like that's a fun thing happening there.
Awnings are a great mini grant.
Oh, yeah.
They're easy to
Yeah,
accomplish.
low-hanging fruit. In fact, you can see the shadow then that those awnings are casting below them so that you don't get that heat, not only as a pedestrian, but inside the building as well. Oh, the one on the right, by the way, you know, sometimes you inherit a storefront that's been kind of modified, that one has been. Sometimes just work with it, you know, put some paint, camouflage it with a bench, which you've kind of done. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but you know, sometimes it doesn't have to be a total redo. Yeah, this is across from the deli, and we've got a building that's really in bad shape. This slide kind of makes it look skinnier than it really is. And so this was, we're pretty careful about tearing down buildings, and it has to be really bad shape for us to say tear it down. This one was one that we said, yeah, across from the deli, it's got a whole bunch of apartments in there. It looks like it's dangerous. It's impacting the quality of this intersection. So we're saying tear down that building and rebuild it, a stick-built building, fairly inexpensive. The first floor can provide office space, so it gives an opportunity for an attorney or an insurance agent that's currently on the square that is occupying space that would really be better served as a retail or entertainment or food and beverage. It gives them an option to get off of the square and still be a part of it and close, but not occupy that valuable space. And then this shows the opportunity on the second floor for apartments or condominiums. And then reusing the open space in there as a pocket park. You have very little green space other than the county square. And so this was one of those pockets that we said, you know, this would really add the value to the new project as well as a project next to it that's there, as well as the buildings across the street. And this is an idea of, you know, put a little porch facing onto it. And this is an idea that the high schoolers came up with, a giant ring that you can use as a group swing, and so it's kind of like a moving conversation pit, and then some upright trees on the alley side to kind of give you an edge from the back of the lot. So then we also talked about coolness. So Jeff, I don't know, I think you maybe start us off?
I think this got.
Oh, okay, he's got me, oh yeah. These aren't gonna show very well, but in the report, we'll clean these up. You let me know when you're ready, Jim, and I'll just... So, you've got some interesting things going for you that are mostly good. Your streetscape project, two-way streets, great for you. That's a great thing to have. You chose to use roughly 9-foot sidewalks as opposed to the more typical 12-foot, but that allowed you to have angled parking, so you almost doubled what would typically be available parking in your streets. And so that's why no one complained about parking, which almost everybody does. Oh, are you going to do something?
Oh, I'll take that. You can just raise your hand when ready for witnesses.
Okay. And so you got a good framework. The streetscape's working in terms of parking, in terms of vehicle circulation. Main Street carries a good traffic count, so we get a teaser to draw us into the downtown. And obviously the courthouse is a beautiful anchor. I think the red circle, by the way, is 1,000-foot diameter, and people will walk 1,000 feet without saying they're taking a walk. And if you look at any successful urban district, it's basically 3 blocks long. East Village, Courthouse, Court Avenue, Valley Junction, all those in Des Moines, all of them are 3 blocks long. So you have a really nicely compact and well-defined downtown. It's very rare we see one that well-defined. And really pretty minimal missing teeth in it. It's a pretty consistent edge. It's just the condition of the buildings are hurting it. A couple of details, and again, we'll put this in the report, but there's some fine tuning, like even the church, as you come in from the northbound and make the left turn, the church has some beautiful stained glass windows, but you have to really look for them. Maybe you could work with the church and very minimal investment of putting some bright lights behind those stained glass windows, and what a beautiful entry that would be for your downtown. Your crosswalks, you spent some money on the pavers for the crosswalks, but they get dirty, they don't have a lot of contrast with the concrete. So you might think of something innovative of just a high contrast color that's that wide on both sides of your brick, so that those crosswalks are a little bit wider and a little bit more defined. And we heard that as dealing with cars and pedestrians is a little tricky here. And then we have some thoughts. We're going to talk about the Courthouse Square and the little gravel lot to the east. We really think that parking on the east side of the square and that gravel lot, you've got plenty of parking, and so that really shouldn't drive cars using that valuable space. So we'd like to see that to be green space, support outdoor activity, a respite while you're shopping or before or after you're having dinner. Let's keep going. You did show extending your streetscape down to Peachtree, one of your anchor tenants. That would really help as well, get another crosswalk streetscape a block further west on Main. Yeah, let's go next. So this is a thought for a gateway. This is in the street right in front of Peachtree, looking east. You've got 2 buildings that have big blank facades on them, so I just took a picture of your courthouse and stretched it across both of those facades as a very large mural. High impact. If you're proud of your courthouse, really brag about it right at your gateway. It could be lots of different things. Someone suggested a travel postcard or whatever. Also, I know, again, urban trees do take some work to maintain, but give me at least 1 or 2 trees here on the left-hand side in the corner of that little parking lot. They're not going to conflict with vehicles, and they're going to frame that view and give you a little color of perennials at the base of it. And Peachtree, I was on the design team for their East Village project, and I know they've got way cool graphics that they have associated with their product and their website, but their signage on this building is almost invisible to me. So instead of the silver letters that are on this concrete wall, just have some paint and paint one of your coolest logo graphics, and really speak to how interesting and progressive this place is.
All right, so I'm going to skim through some things here pretty quickly too, because our emphasis really is on the building and the leadership themes today. But I do want to talk about, as you're redeveloping those buildings, don't forget about the spaces in front of the buildings and around the square. And I just want to point you to some great resources. Project for Public Spaces up here, they have some really great resources that talk about creating places and destinations. We heard this from the students yesterday too. Downtown's boring, it's dull, we saw it in some of the survey comments. So think about how you can group activities together to make it a place and a destination. You really try to think about 10 things to do in a place when you get there. Think about it as downtown for all ages. Think of that 8 to 80 age group. Think about it as comfortable. Think about it as flexible. And Jason Roberts, Better Block, always says, think romantic. That always helps attract people to the downtowns too. And then think about other ways to fill in some of these opportunities you have at your bump outs or some of these empty or underutilized parking spaces and parking lots on the corners with this concept of a pop-up shop. It's maybe an opportunity while you're getting those other buildings fixed up and ready to go for business. Here's that opportunity for that entrepreneur in town to try out a business idea they have for a month or even a week in a really low-cost, portable type of space.
And this is an example for you all here. So small enough it can be put on a tow truck bed and moved around to various locations. It's very bright. This one has a side doorway and a big storefront window that show the product. Let's keep going.
So one of the things that we always talk about when we get into a community is the wayfinding. We talked about this already with some of the distances and the entries, but you've done some really good stuff with your wayfinding signage. I also really like the treatment of the street signs around the square. I think are very attractive and are very easy to read. But there's opportunities we think to expand on this.
Yeah, and think of wayfinding as more than the sign itself, but what are other clues? A grove of trees or a big banner that reinforces the actual sign.
And we also heard in the survey and also in some of our focus groups, interest in the alleys, from just starting with cleaning up the alleys to improving the alley surfaces, but how can we also create those as gathering places or those kind of third spaces in our downtown? So we just wanted to make sure we show you a couple examples here from close by in Oskaloosa and Ottumwa, but we'll talk more about that in the report as well. We also wanted to touch on windows. This maybe is one of my pet peeves, but you have a lot of activity actually happening downtown, but unless you're inside, you don't know that activity is happening. The 3 times that I peeked into the Coffee Connection, there was 15 to 20 people inside there, but you would never know it from outside just because of the way the windows are tinted here. So you really want to think about how can you open up those views both ways, from inside out, but also from outside in. So when somebody's driving down Main Street or walking down Main Street, they can see, oh, there's my buddy inside. Let's go in and have a chat and have a coffee. So try to actually make it much more visible that downtown has some vibrancy and some life going on. So I just grabbed a couple of shots here, particularly the one up above, shows if you don't have that tinted glass, you can actually see what's in those store windows, and it's much more inviting. It's the same way we were at the Mexican restaurant last night on a Wednesday evening. There were literally 100 people, I bet, in there when we left yesterday evening, but you would never know it from the outside just because of the way. And we have these kind of windows all over downtown here. So think about ways to create that better viewing opportunities so you can see what's going on and grow that vibrancy.
One strategy is really bright lights on the inside, right on the inside of those windows.
And then usually we'd show lots of these, but again, today we really want to focus on the buildings and the leadership. But when you think about the downtown, be thinking about the outside of those buildings and that pedestrian experience. What is going to make it comfortable? What is going to make you want to walk down the block? What wants to make you go to the next storefront and the next storefront? So we're thinking about those things like seating and trash cans, public art. Wi-Fi came up a little bit here, but that is almost a must, it feels like these days. Dennis already talked about shade, providing some of that greenery, the lighting, continue what you started with your really nice streetscape down the next block in kind of each direction from the square. Keep going.
This is one of your typical intersections. You've really done a nice job with these vertical light fixtures. But I know you usually put hanging plants, but you've got these little tiny banners. Go to the next slide. Big banners. Give me big banners that really have an impact. And if you're lacking trees, make sure those banners feel soft and green and welcoming. And get those hanging plants back in your system.
We had some comments in the survey, Jim talked about them. People wanted more seating, more opportunities for trash cans, recycling cans. You've got some of those here, but think about ways that Those could also, you could integrate public art into those. They could be projects for the school, the advanced manufacturing or the industrial trades program. Could actually design, work with the art class, design them, and have another class build them. There we go. So here's a couple examples. West Union, art class designed the bicycle rack. The industrial trades class built the bicycle rack. The arts class created some of the designs for the trash bin, and then a local metalsmith built the trash can. Again, providing a local economic development opportunity for a business that now, because they bought some of the equipment to do that, is doing that work all over Northeast Iowa now. The other thing we notice here is you have a lot of recessed entryways, which can help somewhat with that shading that Dennis talked about. But embrace those spaces more. Look at ways to use those. If there's opportunities for outdoor seating, display space, flower pots. The other great thing about having these is we noticed you made a lot of your entrances already accessible. They're no-step entries, which is a really wonderful thing that we a lot of times don't see in older downtown. So this was here to compliment you on some stuff you're already doing and to present some opportunities as well. And the outdoor seating, this is, again, if you can't see through those windows and see what's going on inside, bring the inside outside. We've seen this grow a lot, of course, with the pandemic. In many other communities, it grows the capacity of your restaurant or businesses, coffee shops and so forth, because now you've got that outdoor space. It adds that vibrancy. It can enhance the community because people now are gathering together. So really stress the outdoor seating. We have a couple more examples here too. Make it whimsical. Think of it as art as well. What funky way could we do with chairs and benches? Could we, again, include local artists, include the local school programs? These are called parklets. So this is an example where maybe you give up a couple of parking spaces since you have those narrower sidewalks, but gain some additional space to do some outdoor seating. And again, it shows things are going on, people out on the street.
And this shows what's currently 5 parking spaces on the east side of the square, the gravel lot. So this was something that the high schoolers really loved exploring. Can it be a place where you live stream events? Can you show movies there? Can you have even an outdoor vending location that takes product from some of your other restaurants in the downtown and has another outlet to sell cookies or whatever it might want to sell? Go ahead. And this is a mobile parklet, so it's based on reusing a big dumpster, and you convert it into a mobile park. So it takes up basically one parallel parking space, and so you could park this in front of the theater or in front of a restaurant, wherever you like. You could do more than one. And so you lose a parking space, but you pick up seating and shade for 6 or 7 people, and really activates the streetscape next. And doors are very important. Let's celebrate our residential doors downstairs. They don't have to look like, we're a second-class citizen. Keep going. Keep going. These are just slides, but these are some beautiful examples. Sometimes it's just paint. But do something or special hardware. Keep going.
This just goes back to that public art thing. Think about public art, usable art, art that is an attraction, art that's fun. Think about things that add fun to the downtown. And I put this one in here because Dennis drew that big swing in the empty lot just down the street across from the deli. This is an example of a large swing done as a picture frame, and it becomes this great photo stop. And when we met with the high school students, that was all about, for them, it was what's the photo backdrop, what's the selfie opportunity, what's it look like for photos. So be thinking about those kind of things in the designs too. Other ways to think about art could be simple stencils. They could be stencils with sayings, poems, things that even maybe just appear when it rains. There's lots of fun ways to do stuff like that as well. We heard in the survey, provide opportunities, more things for kids to do downtown. These are actually in Grand Junction, Colorado, but the the students brought it up, even actually talked about a splash pad. Maybe there's some way to bring a little water feature splash pad or some sort of little climbing structures, things again for kids to do, whether they're downtown, in and around the square, which brings the families to the square. The students also talked about a fire pit. This was a picture I actually took in Holland, Michigan. It's right outside the ice cream and chocolate store right in the corner. Their little bump out, like you have a bump out. They built this fireplace and some wall seating, some great plantings, and look, it's become kind of this little community gathering space. And then just a couple left here. You can try these things out temporarily. Better Block has a thing called the Wiki Block. All of the furniture you see on the lower right are just 4x8 sheets of plywood cut out with a CNC router, and they just kind of like snap together in place. So in Fort Dodge, Chris and her group did some planning, and then in an hour out of pallets, built stages, a little bar, some seating areas, and a little backdrop, had a pop-up patio party in one of their vacant lots. And then after the party was over, in less than 20 minutes, we had it all taken down and put away. But it's just a way to activate spaces, try things out.
So I just want to say you ought to be very proud of your high school teenagers that we met with, student council members. They did a great job working with us. We asked them questions about downtown. They were very enthusiastic, so let's go through these pretty quick. These were some of the words: dirty, slow, dull, that they described when we started. Keep going. And we talked about process and how we explore ideas before we sort of make value statements. Keep going. And then so we started to do some sketches, and they loved, this is their ideas, I just drew it. A fire pit with some Adirondack chairs and some circular benches around it. And the fire pit has blue glass in it, and also umbrellas that you can put up that are brightly colored. Or I tested a obsolete sprint car. They said, no, don't do that. So that's, we're gonna keep going.
Because they were talking about the fire pit and Adirondack chairs.
They did really like this idea. I said, can we do some cool swings? So these are some ideas of, it's based on the old tire swing, but built much cooler. And these are built out of heavy-duty plastic, and they can glow at night. You can sit around a ring or ride it like a horse, or the one on the left's like a globe that you kind of climb into. Keep going.
Yeah, you gotta wave to him because he can't hear you.
Oh. And there's that concession. That could be, again, a great project for a high school class to build. Keep going. And then we talked about, it's not just coming up with the ideas, but how do you implement it? And they had some great ideas. These are all their words. You'll see it in the report. And then I asked them to sum up the session, and these were some terrific words that they shared with us about collaborative energy and involving youth and be bright and relevant, not sketchy. That was one of their favorites. So keep going.
All right, so we're gonna talk promotion and how to market the downtown. And you have some fabulous businesses and service businesses too in the downtown. So I'm gonna do some shopping after we get done today because I didn't have enough time throughout the week. So you need to celebrate what you have. I know that a lot of people, use the word sad and uncomfortable and boring, but if you walk in those spaces that have been energized by some really terrific entrepreneurs, you don't feel sad and depressed in those stores. And we want to really, find those ways to bring more of those retailers to the downtown. So let's talk about the strengths that you've got going right now. You have your living windows, which almost everybody talked about in a real positive way. The Raceway Parade that comes along downtown, and we will put a few pictures in the report on that. Homecoming Parade and the Farmers Market, again, things to bring people into the downtown. I know the Farmers Market went away, but I've heard that it is coming back to the square again. But how can you build on that? How can you partner with other organizations, and we'll talk about that in a minute, to really bring more people into the downtown, keep them there longer. I know that you have full hotels during the summer when the races are going on, but what about the rest of the year? What can you be doing to have weekend events in the downtown throughout the calendar year? theater special events, like the mocktails and magnolias, I really like that. So when the theater's doing something like that, the retail and even the service businesses have an opportunity to explore that theme. So as we walk around the downtown, we should have been seeing pictures of magnolias and all sorts of things in the businesses to help reinforce their event, to bring more people into the theater. You are not competing with each other in the downtown. And actually, I didn't hear that at all, but I just want you to remember that you're a community in a neighborhood in the downtown, and we do need to help each other out. And I think we've had a lot of good conversations with the downtown retailers about the group they're starting, and we'll be that on the next slide. Yoga on the courthouse lawn was another thing that we heard. But then when we're talking about all the organizations that are doing activities in the downtown, we got a little bit confused with all of the acronyms, but here are a few. And as you can see, it's all scattered, and maybe it feels disjointed to some people in the community, maybe it doesn't. But I think you really need to find that one entity, whoever that may be, to start really layering those events so everybody knows what everybody else is doing. And then that way you can have stronger events. So special events in the community that you're already doing. I feel like I should have a wand. Farmers market. So when you do your farmers market, again, maybe you add entertainment, and maybe you've done that already, or food trucks, or getting the restaurants around the square to be there too. And then that way you can keep people in the downtown a couple hours. Here is an artist, so maybe art and crafts festival in the downtown. So homecoming parade was another thing that you're currently doing, right? And I'm sure that you're painting your windows, but maybe there are other ways throughout the week of homecoming week that all the businesses are dressing up, and there could be contests and businesses in the downtown, just kind of like there is at school, right? Pajama day or wear a silly hat day. And then the Dragons Car Club is going to start again here in the downtown. I think next month they're going to be going. So there's a big opportunity to bring that kind of theme, and I know you do this with the races, but bring that theme into the retail and maybe even the service businesses. You can kind of see where I'm going, right? And then lastly, you have such amazing sidewalks, even, they're 9 feet wide, but there's an opportunity on a Saturday or maybe even a weekday to do some sort of chalk art festival. One of the things we heard so much in the survey was more kids activities. So this would be a really good way to bring the kiddos downtown, and maybe you have contests, so you could do children's art, young adult art, or bring even some artists that actually do this for a living into your downtown and create these really cool art atmosphere in the community.
The high school students were all about the chalk art too. That was an idea they had as well.
So I think there's a lot of synergy. Sometimes it's behind the scenes, and that's part of the reason we're here. We're trying to draw these ideas out of you. So then after we're gone, you have enough time then to talk about these and implement some of these really easy ideas. That chalk art, it's like $5 for a pail of chalk. Make sure that you're sending that information out to the schools, and maybe you started a really easy way, but you're bringing people downtown. And maybe each of the retailers are drawing chalk art out in front of their things, and there's a scavenger hunt to find that art. And there's a basket of goodies at the end if you win and you find all of those chalk arts from those retailers. There's lots of different ways to do that. Retail events, the Knoxville area merchant activities are amazing. That is CAM, not CAMA, right? The other one that is the Ministerial Association. But cross promotions, I know that you're already doing a few of those, but including coupons. So maybe if you go to the hairstylist and you're purchasing a product, then that way you can take a coupon over to candies for $1 off for flowers. There's lots of different cross promotions that you can do at holidays and throughout the year. These are some of the things that we do up in Fort Dodge that have been really successful. We have a downtown retail group, has about 23, 24 retailers in it, and they come and go out of the group, but we meet monthly, like the merchants here do. So Chicks Night Out, simple flyer, it's really easy then to put it on social media, send it to the chamber, send it to the newspaper and the radio. Another one that we do is our Main Street Market in June. So just a picture of people shopping in the downtown. Again, make sure that you're really using social media to push your flyers and your posts. And then Cinco de Mayo, this is from a couple years ago. But all of the retailers that were participating in those. Again, collaborative, cross-promotion pieces I think really will work well for your downtown. And I know you're starting that, but make sure that you're really connecting with all of the different groups. There it is again. I can't talk about it enough. Cross-promotions. Maybe a crazy days in the summer or ridiculous days, whatever you want to call it, but sidewalk sales. I really like the fact that the city is allowing the businesses to put products out on the curb or right in front of their storefront so that people can see that, and it really attracts people. They're gonna stop and they're gonna come in your front door. Once they're in that front door, it's the retailer's job to do the selling, but the city with those ordinances are helping those retailers. So there's lots of small things that are really gonna impact business. Again, collaboration. You have such a unique idea with the Iowa Flag Day, because the Iowa flag was created by a resident. So think about how you can market that for retail. I know it's celebrated, but maybe there are other things you can do in the downtown to really tie that in. I used the wrong hand. There we go. There we are. So weekly summer event series on Thursday nights. So it's not just about the retail piece, but it's about reclaiming your downtown, having your residents remember that it is a fun place to be. Rotary's done so much work on the gazebo there, so let's celebrate them and the work that they did to give you this really great structure. Bring a band in, have contests out of there. We had several ideas from the students, so I'll just read a few of them really, really quick. A barbecue cook-off, a spring fest, a summer fest, an October fest. We could keep you guys busy all the time. Bring the high school band and just let them play there. If you have a community band or community singers, perfect place, right? And there's shade over there too. I know that's one of the things that some of the people were talking about, but there is shade in that space. And then I threw in some really cool pictures again, because you have great businesses here in the downtown. This of course is Coffee Connection, but and what like Jeff had said, those windows are not helping that business. But once you get in the door, you want to stay forever. And the food is delicious too. You guys know that. Signage and store hours is one of the things we really noticed was missing in the downtown. So if you have tourists that are coming in or people just passing through, right? And they think, oh, that looks like a really cool business, but if we don't know your hours, they're probably gonna drive by and not get out of the car. And I did put Candy's as an example just because, she's changing out her windows, but her name is so small up there and it was black. I know she's changing that to a white signage, so we're gonna be able to see it better. But business owners really need to be thinking about those things. And then a slide just showing, different ways to do hours. It doesn't have to be too sophisticated. We just need to know when you're open, and you need to be open consistently so we can start trusting that you're gonna be there on your hours. And we do understand overhead and staff time. So if you need to reduce hours on Mondays or maybe Mondays and Tuesdays, we understand that, but make sure that it's posted and that on Wednesday, if you're gonna be there at 9 o'clock, you're there at 9 o'clock. Just some other slides about districts. Some of the ways that you can promote yourself online. Again, I think we all know the standard ones, Facebook, Instagram. Employees can use Snapchat if it's approved by that employer. Also, shopiwa.com, I think Jim's gonna talk about that. But there are lots of tools online, and that's where most of the people are shopping. That's one of the things that happened through the pandemic. We're seeing people purchasing items online and picking them up at the stores. So make sure, if you're a retailer, you have those options. And I think that's, Almo, that's you.
Yeah, that's me.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. All right, well, I'm gonna close the show with a couple of short closing segments. And I don't think we've ever done one of these assessment visits without talking about business development in some form. Jim hit on it a little bit today. Typically, we talk about things like business recruitment, business expansion, business retention, business succession is usually a big issue. But one of the things that we do when we're in town is take a true look at the existing business mix. And it's a little bit of an unusual situation. You have some momentum going here in Knoxville, which we like. There's some new businesses, and again, I'll bet people that live here haven't been in some of these businesses that are really cool inside. So you have some business momentum. I would probably still say, for a community this size, the mix of the business district in downtown is a little bit below average, and I think that's for a couple of reasons. And you saw it in the survey. You do have a larger percentage of service professional businesses in the downtown locations than the normal city would. Much of that is due to the courthouse location. And for example, a law office or insurance office wanting to be close to the courthouse. But then I think what Jim talked about too in the business, the building rehabs, some of the buildings that are in bad shape, I don't think a lot of people can see the possibility. There aren't as many business-ready spaces available, which can lead to some vacancy problems or some low rent issues too. So I think that's a couple of the things that maybe you don't have going for you in the area of business development, but I do get excited about what we're seeing with some new businesses in town. I wanted to talk briefly about, and you can shift the slide. There you go. I'm going to start just with some quick things about retention. Jim talked about business recruitment, and usually when we do one of these visits, if you got a vacancy, everyone wants to fill the vacancy, everyone wants new businesses. It came out in the survey here, and he made a good point. You might not be totally ready for that. You can do some passive things, which I'll talk about in a second. But I think probably right now, the succession and taking care of your existing businesses is most key. And first of all, the Small Business Development Center. Please develop a relationship with them if you don't have one already, because they can really give your existing businesses some help. Business interaction. I think there's some of this going on. I think one of the groups in town here, I forget the name of the event, it's more of a community event, I guess, but there is some interaction already happening. We like to see businesses have camaraderie and get together, and it just leads to so many opportunities if they're talking to each other. So it's always good when we see some kind of a quarterly mixer or breakfast that businesses do. A group like the Chamber of Commerce or CAM, I think, could pull something like that off. But have some speakers, have some topics, talk about business assistance, talk about websites, talk about selling online, those kinds of things. It also is an opportunity to get to know each other so you can make referrals to the other business. So it's good to have people knowing what their neighbors sell. Good opportunity. Business directory, we always like to see some kind of a business directory. It's a lot easier to do online, searchable ones than paper ones, because things change so fast in your business communities. We like to see organizations give businesses a boost. When I'm at home and I'm on Facebook, I constantly get Chris's Facebook post popping up promoting the menu at a local diner in Fort Dodge, and it makes me hungry. And I'm too far away to go there, but it's so cool. And I think maybe that's one of the advantages of a community that has like a Main Street program that has a downtown manager that's actually dedicated to doing that and helping businesses all the time. It's nice to have someone that has that role in the community. And then connecting the resources. Having somebody in town that's constantly getting out business information, it was really important during COVID when there were so many funding opportunities available for businesses. And then Chris mentioned at shopiowa.com, this is a platform that we have at the Iowa Economic Development Authority where businesses can actually sell online. Jim Thompson, who's running the slides, has a lot to do with this program. But we contract with an outside vendor that sets this whole thing up. And businesses can actually put their products that are for sale online. It's a little bit different thinking for most businesses because now they have to photograph their stuff, you know, and put those pictures online of their products, and then they have them to ship it also. But I think it's going pretty well, and I don't know if Knoxville's connected to that or not, but it's a free service, so I would totally get that information out to your businesses and get on the website and take a look at that. Business succession. I can't think of a bigger business development problem in the state or in the country as I travel around than seeing aging business owners in communities, and I think especially downtowns. And they tend to be the landmark businesses that have been there forever with maybe very little hope of selling that business, or maybe not having that idea in mind. And I just worry, you know, I see the, you know, the business owners approaching 60, 70 years old, still in business. Someday, some of these towns are gonna wake up and they're gonna have 4 or 5 businesses gone. So we stress business succession and actually making an active part of your plan. It's not a magic solution though. It's not an easy thing. But I would get involved in some kind of a business visitation program. I think it's a great opportunity for a chamber of commerce, for example, to send people out, not just the director, but the chamber people, to talk to businesses and look for red flags and find out what they need, because you can learn a lot and people understand that you care about them. If you're going in and out of businesses, you've got to be visible. But then reacting, you know, after you open up that dialogue, maybe it is a business that's considering closing, retiring, selling in the next few years, and you can start the dialogue and start working with them. But keeping constant communication with the businesses. There are a lot of entities that do business succession workshops. It's not a bad idea for the buyers or the sellers. Working with retiring businesses, just keeping possible successors in mind, finding out what their plans are, finding out if they have family members or a store employee that might take up the reins of their business. Maybe even bringing alumni back and doing a very quick Facebook marketing campaign to see who would be interested in coming back and running a business in downtown Knoxville. And then considering financial packages, maybe rental assistance, things like that, for a first year of a transitions businesses operations. Okay? And then recruitment. You know, I don't want to talk a lot about this right now. Almost every town needs it, some kind of a business recruitment effort. Knoxville, as I mentioned before, has the problem of a lot of buildings that are not business ready. So that's a limitation, but you have to be ready to do business recruitment in a passive way because leads will often come to you. So being prepared for contacts that are coming in, having information about the buildings, square footage, that kind of thing. We like to see communities do building inventories for all their downtown buildings with all this information. I'd start with the vacancies and get that done. Find out who owns the thing. Get the contact information. Find out what the previous use was so you can quickly turn around information when you have someone interested in moving in. Getting those spaces ready. You gotta have someone sweeping out the entryways and getting the dead flies out of the windows and that kind of thing. Making them look good. You see down in the corner the picture of the sign. I don't know if there are realtors in the room. Sometimes realtor signs are pretty ugly. Not always, but doing some kind of a sign like this, just promoting a business opportunity. Maybe a bakery was on their wish list. So putting that out there and making people know. You want to make the vacancies look good, but you also want people to know they're vacant, in my opinion. It is a business opportunity. I've seen communities do business plan competitions. Maybe local banks went together and offered a cash prize for the best business plan with the hopes of having that business actually open up in a downtown area. But being very prepared, that's what I'm getting at here. We like to see communities come up with clustering plans, especially when you have limited space available for new businesses. This is a difficult concept, but it's kind of like, well, our entertainment businesses are here, our law offices, our professional offices are kind of in this area, this district. We've got high retail restaurants over here, that kind of thing. It's a really difficult thing to enforce. In fact, you can't enforce it, but it's nice to have a plan in place. So if you are doing a business recruitment campaign of some kind, you can kind of target specific locations for specific business types. Next slide, please. We subscribe to this is a firm, it's called Esri. I always forget what that stands for. But it's a firm that knows everything about you guys. They use GIS mapping and data information, and they know what you guys buy. They know what Knoxville people buy. They know what they're interested in. And they also measure the leakage and surplus of specific business types, so they know how much money is leaving town to buy shoes and how much money is coming into town to buy shoes. So I took a look at your Esri data, and this is total retail trade and food and drink. You have a $37 million surplus in sales in retail. Now, when I delve deeper into that, you actually have a leakage, dollars leaking town in most of the retail categories. But the big one is a $38 million sales surplus in general merchandise stores. You know what that is, right? It's Walmart. It's Walmart, it's probably Dollar General also. So it's kind of a wash with the rest of your retail categories. You have sales surpluses in grocery. It was actually a big surplus. People are coming here to buy groceries, is what I'm trying to say. Other motor vehicle dealers, which I assume is used cars, there's a surplus here. Beer, wine, and liquor. Food and drinking places. So I've got this figured out. Pella people are sneaking over here to drink your beer in Knoxville. I just know what's happening. Books, music, florists. There are all sales surpluses in those categories. There are leakages in almost every other category. Auto dealers, auto parts, which I thought was weird since this is such an automotive related town, you actually have leakage in those areas. Gas stations, furniture, electronics, shoe stores, sporting goods, and clothing. A lot of the areas that people said they wanted, this is proven true, and you have leakages in those areas. Some of them are a little deceiving, I think, because people probably buy a lot of shoes at Walmart, I would think, and maybe even Dollar General, I don't know. So it actually shows in the Esri data that you actually have zero sales in shoes. No shoe stores, that's why. But you've got a Walmart that's categorized as a general merchandise store. So some of it's a little deceiving. And I'm gonna put all this data in your report, and I only point this out because a lot of towns strategize and they use these kinds of figures to find out what their voids are, to see what they can support if they ever do a business recruitment campaign, which I think is down the road for you. That isn't to say that if you have a strong cluster of businesses already and a strong surplus, that you can't strengthen that surplus too. But I think it's important information to know, so we're gonna get all that information to you, okay? I've fallen way behind here. Here's my sales surplus and leakage figures. So we can move on. All right, I saved this for last. This is not the sexy part of the program. It's a short part of the program, but other than the building rehab bluntness we had, I think this is the second area that we think is the most important. And there's not a ton of action areas or steps in this section. But it's all based on roles and leadership in the community. And Chris hit on this a little bit with the organizations. But one thing I wanted to say is I do a lot of work, as all of us do, in really small towns, and maybe even a town of 3,000 people, if you consider that a small town. And it's amazing to me that some of those communities have actually no community development organizations or players. No business association, no betterment group, no chamber of commerce, nothing. They might have a city clerk, they might have a mayor. And it's tough. It's an easy recommendation for me to make, because I can sit down and put together an org chart and chart the future for an organizational structure to get to meet their goals and their vision. Now, that's not the case in Knoxville. Chris alluded to this. You have so many organizations in this town. When we were meeting and interviewing people the last 2 days, usually by the end of the day, I've kind of reached my knowledge fill. I've felt like I've learned everything about Knoxville that I can, but it seemed like every meeting I was hearing another acronym for an organization in town that had something to do with community development. Chamber of Commerce, CAM, and some of these organizations, people in Knoxville didn't know existed. Some of them are new, granted, but I mentioned the Chamber of Commerce. CAM is the Knoxville Area Merchants, which is a group of, I think, about 10 businesses that are doing business promotions. Fantastic idea. Thrive, which is doing events in town. There's a Knoxville Development Group. There's not only CAM, there's CAMA? Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. CAMA, I had it wrong. And that's Knoxville Area Ministerial Association. Am I close? Okay. There's the library, there's the city staff, there's service clubs, there's a historical society. There's a lot of groups in town. And we are presenting a lot of stuff to you in this report. And I know you're probably thinking, well, where does that fall? And I don't think any of us on this panel are sure. And in fact, I think when we were listening to the missions of the different organizations in town, it confused us for a good part of the time. And some of the organizations don't have a well-versed mission that they can state. There are a lot of miscellaneous things going on. So those groups are doing fantastic things in town, but they're done in a singular kind of way. Does that make sense to people? They're maybe running roughshod. They're going in different directions. There doesn't seem to be a cohesiveness or an opportunity for partnership. So it was kind of confusing to us. I'm an organizational guy, so I want to sit down and sort through this and put this organization under that one, and I know I can't do that. But I think for projects to get done, it's real important for those groups to define what their, one of the ministers used the word constitution, what their constitution is, what they're there for. To do be able to do a short elevator speech, so when someone from Thrive, I talk to them, they can quickly tell me what they stand for, what they do. I think it would provide focus for all of the organizations in town. But let me take a step backwards real quick. I've just totally forgotten about my slides, so I'll just wave to Jim and hopefully the right one will come up. If I could take a step backwards, when we looked at what we thought the downtown priorities and the biggest challenges are, and we're basing on what we saw and what we heard and what we gleaned from the survey, the things that we thought were most important, and you heard it before, you heard the bluntness before, the building rehabs, business development, which I just talked about, helping businesses, maybe in the future recruiting new ones, events, a lot of people say they want more events downtown, funding sources, and that's grant writing and that kind of thing to do this type of activity, and housing, that's probably a citywide issue, but there are opportunities in the downtown area. But out of those things, we cannot figure out who would be doing those with your existing organizational structure. And that's not totally uncommon. Lots of times it's the challenging things that don't get done because no one's doing it. No one's there to do it. So we think it's important to connect some dots there. The only events might be the only exception to that, because a couple of the organizations, that's their kind of their charter. They do good events like Thrive, and Cam's starting to do retail events. So we want to fill those voids somehow. And it's, as I said before, it is a challenge. We want to eliminate some of the uncertainty and the disconnect. We want to connect the dots. And as I said, some organizations themselves struggle to define their roles, and it led to some confusion. And confusion, I think, community-wide. And as I said before, all these groups are doing great things. We just want to be able to justify their existence by giving them a reason for being there, a mission. And I don't know if we call this an audit, an organizational audit, or an overhaul, but we want to do something to prevent the things from slipping through the cracks from all those organizations. This report, as I said, is just full of stuff. And as I was sitting and listening to all of us come up with these recommendations, I think in some towns that we've worked in, they have an organizational structure, a community-wide organizational structure where things that we offer fall very nicely into place under different organizations. I don't think that's the case here because we don't exactly know what those missions are. But I think implementation's only gonna work if we get this sorted out. And we heard constantly in our 3 days that we're not the first team of people that's come in here. In fact, Knoxville's paid some big money for some other groups in the past to do this kind of thing. And people were frustrated that implementation didn't happen later. And we know we don't have all the answers. Some of our ideas might be totally goofy, who knows? But we want you to make decisions about that and implement some of the things that you like and that you agree with that we're saying. We don't want this report to sit on the shelf. So to do that, I think the organizations, and I'm harping on this, need to have a clear mission in mind to see where they fall into place. So next slide, I think. This seems like it's not rocket science. We know there's been some thought about doing this, and I think it was the Thrive group that was getting ready to do something like this, and then COVID hit, because I think some of you recognize what we're saying here. But we think you need to get these groups together. And I don't know if that's 5 groups or 25 groups. I'm not sure. I think that's your call. But start with a meeting. It's a big meeting. I think you need a facilitator for this kind of a meeting. Invite organizations and probably government people, city administrator, mayor, that kind of a person, county supervisors. And then I think each organization should come to that meeting prepared to present a short mission, just to stand up like I'm doing right now in a microphone and say what they do. This sounds so simple, but I think it's really important for Knoxville. Have them give their elevator speech, define what they do, have it on paper, and a lot of the organizations probably don't have that right now. They need to think about that. And then highlight their scope of work, what kinds of activities they do. Bullet point the projects or activities they do, and perhaps potential new projects that they've been thinking about. Just so we all know what we got. It's kind of an audit of what's going on in town. And then take a few minutes to identify areas of overlap. Are there organizations that are doing the same thing possibly, or maybe a small segment of their work is overlap? Because if it is, maybe one of them can back off of that, or you can form partnerships between a couple of organizations to even be more efficient. And then the voids I just talked about. We identified those voids. You might have others in mind, but take a look at those voids and find out where you can fill in some of those spots. We just think it's an essential way to go about this. Next slide, Jim. But work on a plan to fill those voids. Of course, you would need board approval if a mission changed or a scope of work changed for an organization. But look for those project partnership activities. And we hope that you take a look at the 6 voids that we identified that aren't actually assigned or happening here. Communicate the volunteer needs to your community. After you see what you got and what you need, communicate this. Use media, social media, the newspaper, whatever. Get the word out and say we need help in this area. Maybe you fill a spot on one of those committees or organizations. Jim mentioned the possible new hire. I agree. I think it's critical to have another professional person in town that can maybe even serve as a liaison to the groups and be the person that goes out and looks for grants and keeps abreast of programs like the Community Catalyst Program or the Downtown Revitalization Fund that Jim was talking about. But someone to pull the efforts all together, I think, would be very helpful. Knoxville was in the Main Street program a long time ago, and I think that's a beauty of having a downtown director. It doesn't have to be a downtown director here. It could be a community economic development, community development director, but I think things slip through the cracks because you don't have someone like that in town. They offer professional support, a liaison to groups, and then I think you're gonna have to have check-in meetings with that group and keep that plan in front of everybody and just see if all the organizations are fitting nicely into that big picture. So again, I don't think it's rocket science, but we want to understand missions and the focus of these groups better. Okay? Slide. Another slide. And I mentioned these aren't from Knoxville, but there have been a lot of these done for Knoxville. Next slide. I talked about implementation. Boy, am I flying through these now. Okay? So we're gonna have a written report back in 4 to 6 weeks. We're gonna prioritize things in our mind, recommendations in our mind, and well, this is an immediate thing. What I'm talking about now, I put on the immediate list, but there may be some longer term things that this could be happening, you know, from now for 3 years or something like that. We're gonna prioritize those. Use us. We want implementation. We're close to Knoxville. We would be more than happy to come and help you sort this out further, help you with implementation plans. Jeff has always offered to come up and help with the implementation plan for like a placemaking session or something like that.
That's good.
Okay? Because you participated in this visit, we give you a couple of free registration scholarships to our Iowa Downtown Conference, which is the first week in August in Iowa City. It's a fantastic conference, tracks, speakers, so I would love to have you take advantage of that. We want Knoxville to succeed. I mean, we want to get involved with Knoxville. We want to hook you up with grants. We want to work on some of these priorities. Does anyone have any questions for us?
Yes. Are you going to pass a copy of this slideshow to Heather Ussery, or will we have access to this slide presentation?
We can do that. Yes, we can do that.
The presentation was also video recorded, so that will be available here locally somehow.
I hope I didn't swear. It's happened before. We really did enjoy our time here, though. You know, I think sometimes when we do these visits, towns kind of think we're critical or something like that. But you got good things going on here. We just want to capitalize on some of the good things you've done and keep the ball rolling and hit some of your biggest issues head on. Other questions? Well, thank you again. We're all available. You can call us if you have a specific question later. And please look for the report. Keep us posted. Ask us to come back. Thank you.
Thank you.